No romance allowed by Kana. Chapter 9. I called Rick for assistance after taking a moment to compose myself. I'd been so looking forward to Jane and her rent payment, and suddenly that bushy bearded man showed up at my front door saying Jane couldn't come. Rick dashed over in record time and brought Lou, the apartment complex security guard. With 2 ex-Marines present, I didn't have to worry about Peter trying anything stupid while hearing him out, so I invited all 3 men inside. Lou stood in front of the kitchen counter as Rick and Peter sat on the sofa in front of him. I grabbed a seat on the ottoman across from the men as Rick asked for Peter's ID. Peter calmly got his ID out and handed it over while offering a smile to Lou, who was squinting at him. I had a hard time seeing any resemblance to Jane in him. Jane looked professional. Her brother looked like a hobo with his bushy beard hiding most of his face well. His clothes were scruffy and well-worn, and his brown hair hung unkempt about 2 inches past his ears. Good thing he didn't smell, at least he'd taken a shower. My sister tried to call you, but no one picked it up. Peter looked at me as he took a long white envelope out of his tattered backpack and extended it to me. This is a letter from her to you. When did she call me? I didn't see a missed call from her, I said, taking the envelope from his hand. Peter shrugged, leaning back on the sofa. I recognized Jane's handwriting from the check she'd sent. The letter explained that she'd had excruciating abdominal pain and had been rushed to a hospital 5 days before her scheduled flight to California. A CT scan revealed that her intestine had been perforated, and infection was flowing through the tear and into her body. If she hadn't had emergency surgery right then, she would have died. Before the surgery, she assigned someone from the office to contact me, but they hadn't been able to reach me. The only thing she could think of to do was to send her brother to my apartment since he had been assigned to help her in California anyway. By the end of her letter, Jane asked me to call her so she could explain in person. Dumbstruck, I stared at the letter until a soft tap on my shoulder brought me back to reality. He suggested we just call Jane, Rick said, glancing at Peter. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, Jane asked me to call her in the letter, I said, waving the letter. Turning to Peter, I asked, is it okay to call her at this hour? Yes. She's waiting for your call, Peter said. Swallowing, I took my phone from the coffee table in front of me, dialed Jane's number, and put it on speakerphone at Peter's suggestion. I sighed inwardly. I can't believe this is happening to me. After the 3rd ring, someone picked up, asking me to wait so she could connect me with Jane. I glanced at Peter. He shrugged his shoulders as if saying, I told you she sent me. Jane said, hello, then switched our call to video. Oh, Jane. My heart sank to see how pale she was. Her hand was attached to an dangling above her head. She winced while shifting slightly on her bed. Her cheeks were sunken in with black color under her eyes. I cleared my throat to push down the sudden sadness rushing over me because her appearance reminded me of my mom after the accident that had killed her in the end. My brother must have arrived? She said. Yes, he is here, I replied, glancing at Peter, who was now looking down at the hat he was twirling with his fingers. He mentioned that you tried to call, but I didn't see your missed calls. Someone in my family had tried to call you, but he had a hard time with the connection because of the blizzard, said Jane, after pausing for a moment. And I made a mistake on writing your email address without a dash between your first and last name, which is why my email didn't go through. When she mentioned the blizzard, something struck me. Wait, I remember. There were a few calls from a private number. I thought it was a prank or telemarketer because each time I picked up, I couldn't hear anything but a choppy, staticky voice. Then I just stopped answering the calls, I said. Sorry. Yeah, I forgot to remove the private setting on our phones, Jane said apologetically. That's fine. Peter had to come out there anyway, and we've been able to connect finally. So, when will you come to California then? I asked. Jane shook her head. I can't because I need another surgery next month, she said. Her voice sounded tired. My stomach felt heavy. I understand. No worries, I will return your check to your brother. I nodded, diverting my eyes from the screen. Goodbye, money, welcome back, instant noodles. Well, thanks, and get well soon, Jane. It's nice to, hey. I hadn't seen Peter lean closer to snatch the phone from my hand. Ignoring my glare, he sat back and aimed the phone toward himself. Hi, sis. Peter greeted, waving his hand. Jane shrieked. Oh my God, Peter. What happened to your face? When was the last time you shaved? I don't remember, he grinned widely, rubbing the bridge of his nose with his finger. He glanced sideways at me, and I fixed him with an annoyed glare. And you went to Rory's apartment like that? Didn't even try to change your shaggy clothes? How embarrassing. Jane sounded genuinely disgusted. Don't worry, I took a shower this morning, he shrugged. And then, you have to blame Marcus. From the way he explained, I thought Rory was a male. You moron. Why would you think I arranged to stay with a man while working out there? Jane snapped. And it's not Marcus's job to give you a detailed explanation. You aren't a kid. Even if Rory were male, do you think it is polite to show up at someone's house looking like that? Obviously, yes, Peter smirked mischievously. I thought Rory was one of your ex-boyfriends. Shut up, Peter. If I weren't sick, I would strangle you for saying that. Now, give the phone back to Rory, Jane said sharply. Don't forget to cut your hair and shave your beard. For heaven's sake, don't you dare show up at our client's office with that beard. Grinning, Peter returned the phone to me before his sister finished her last sentence. I'm so sorry, Rory. My brother. As Jane took a deep breath, her eyes closing for a brief moment, a pain in the neck. I forced a smile and said, that's okay. Get well soon, Jane. Jane nodded and thanked me, and we hung up. Clenching my phone, I looked at Rick, who was giving me a sympathetic look. Sighing, I stood up and walked to my bedroom to get Jane's check so I could return it to Peter, relieved I hadn't cashed it yet. This is your sister's check, I said, returning to the living room and extending the check to him. Peter replied, you don't need to return the check. Since I'm here to replace her, I'll need a room. Do you think you can take me as your roommate? What? My mouth dropped. Peter looked at me solemnly, cocking his head slightly as if trying to look endearing. From the corner of my eye, I saw Rick's eyes widen and then heard him chuckle. End of Chapter 9. You have been listening to Chapter 9 of No Romance Allowed by Kana. Be sure to click the like button and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to share this channel with your friends so they can enjoy the story. If you want to know what I've been writing, please subscribe to my newsletter in the description below. Thank you for supporting my work.